Clegg takes your calls with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. 0845 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC 973. This is Call Clegg on London's biggest conversation. LBC 97.3.
It's 9 o'clock on Thursday the 19th of December, and that means it's time for Call Clegg with me, Nick Clegg, here on LBC 97.3. So I'm really keen to take your questions for the next half an hour. You can call on 0845 6060 973. You can email at nickclegg@lbc.co.uk. And, of course, you can watch on lbc.co.uk. So let's go to the first caller. Stuart in Hendon. Hello, Stuart.
Good morning. You said that we can't stop any immigrants coming in the country because it's illegal. I don't really know what we need the House of Commons for in that case. But what is your cut-off figure, Mr. Clegg? How many more are we going to let in? 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 50 million? You must have some sort of idea in your head when enough is enough.
Stuart, firstly, what you say is not correct. Of course, we can stop people from other parts of the country, those from outside the European Union, from coming to this country. In fact, we have done. I mean, for some time now, we're basically not allowing people on low skills from non-EU countries for coming into the country. We have every right to sort of check who's coming in, and indeed, as I've often said on this programme, I also want to check people going out as well, so we know who's coming in and who's coming out. In terms of the overall numbers, the thing you've got to remember, Stuart, is this is a two-way street. There are lots and lots and lots of Brits who go and live and work elsewhere. So the overall kind of population levels in our country are partly dependent, of course, on birth rates. That's the very big thing. Partly dependent on people who come here, but partly also depend on people who leave. And we've had this discussion over the last few days about EU immigration within the EU. There's about 2 million, I think. Some think tank I saw recently said there's about 2 million Brits living and working in other parts of the European Union. So that's why that's why I never pluck a kind of figure out of thin air, because it's partly dependent on what Brits themselves decide to do.
Stuart, quick response from you.
Well, 2 million people, as he just said, the act word, working, not living on benefits. The truth is, you have no control whatsoever of who comes to this country.
No, that's not true.
None at all whatsoever.
No, it's not true, Stuart. It's just simply not true. I mean, I know you obviously feel that strongly, but it just ain't true. Of course we have control over people who come from other parts of the world, and what we've actually done to address your other point about benefits is to say that within the European Union, whereas we've all got the rights, you've got the right, Stuart, I've got the right, everyone's got the right to go and look for work and move to look for work in other parts of the European Union, just as other people in the European Union have the right to look for work here. What we're saying is the right to come to the United Kingdom to look for work is not the same as the right to claim. And I think it's really important people understand that there is a big distinction between the two, and that's why we're saying you can't just turn up here and claim benefits, no questions asked from the first day. You can't continue to receive benefits paid for by British taxpayers with sort of no strings attached. So we're actually making it really, really clear you can't do that. And by the way, so are other EU member states as well. They're doing similar things.
Just on this point, before we move on, Deputy Prime Minister, Theresa May, the Home Secretary, is keen to try and look at the possibility of a total of 75,000 as a sort of cap. I understand you've described it as illegal and unworkable.
Yeah, I think it'd be really bad for our economy. I think if you just were to pull up the drawbridge, I think our NHS would be in serious trouble. The City of London, on which so many people depend in this great city, would be undermined overnight. Look, as we were saying to Stuart,
just to limit it to 75,000. Why is it so bad?
This is about whether you basically turn your back on a long-established principle that everybody listening to this programme is able to look for work and move to other countries within the European Union. That's kind of one of the rights of entry. If you're a member of the European Union, is that you can move around to different countries looking for work. And as I say, 2 million people. They have some work, but by the way, in response to Stuart, there are lots and lots of people who are retired who, of course, settle in other parts.
Isn't that the key of the issue? Because I would argue that most of the Brits living overseas are probably having a nice glass of red wine and some tapas on the Costa del Sol. It's not exactly the same as coming to Marble Arch and defecating in the bushes outside the Ritz.
Oh, for heaven's sake! There are German lawyers in London. There are Finnish engineers.
And there are some people who come here and just decide to camp in Marble Arch. You know that as well as I do.
And what we have said is, if that's exactly what happens to an EU migrant, in other words, if they basically end up on our streets and they shouldn't be here, they're going to go back home. We're changing the rules to deal with that. But I really, really would be seriously careful about somehow maligning every German lawyer, Dutch engineer, Finnish accountant. Well, no, but these are European Union
who urinate in the bushes.
But these are European Union citizens. People who abuse the benefit system don't belong here. People who end up on the streets and shouldn't be here, they won't be here. We're changing the rules. We're toughening up the rules in the way in which no other government has done previously.
An EasyJet flight.
But I do not think it is right for us, for our economy, given that about 3 million jobs, over 3 million jobs in this country, depend in one way or another on our membership of this big, borderless single market in Europe. I think it would be bad for British economic prosperity.
Just to have 75,000. What is the problem there?
Well, I'll just explain what the problem is. I think it would be very bad for the economy. Okay. It would make us poorer. There'd be fewer jobs, and I don't think people would thank you or thank the Conservative Party. And I certainly don't think the 2 million Brits living and working abroad would thank the Conservative Party if there was a tit for tat where other member states, other European countries, then pull up the drawbridge as well. You either believe that it is good for Britain to be part of this kind of open, big single market which helps to create so many jobs, which keeps us prosperous as a nation, or you want to take the risk, which I'm not going to take because I think it's irresponsible, of simply pulling up the drawbridge in a way which would make us poorer.
Let's move on to other calls. Mr.
Karen in Windsor. Hello, Karen.
Good morning, Mr. Clegg.
Morning.
Without wishing to give you a platform to politicise, I wanted to ask why it is that you and many other politicians do not consider the economic well-being and growth of areas around Heathrow and their dependency on the Heathrow factory for the continued economic comfort that these areas enjoy. Without expansion, the areas around Heathrow and the 250,000 plus direct and indirect jobs enjoyed by those people and their families and loved ones, and the wealth that expands to local businesses in the form of available cash to spend, will of course be impacted.
Karen,
why have I not got a voice?
No, well,
I live under the flight. Well, exactly, which is why I'm calling. I live under the flight path, and I still accept. Regardless of the impact that it has on me, that we need growth in this area to be able to continue to enjoy the way we live currently.
Well, Karen, of course you've got a voice, and it's great. You've got you're expressing your views on this programme, and no doubt through your local MP and others, you should express your views as well. Of course, I'm aware that there are lots of people whose jobs are dependent in the Heathrow area on the airport. I just got to tell you my point of view. My point of view has always been why I've always opposed certainly the plans that I've seen in the past for the expansion of Heathrow is because of the environmental effects. I'm not going to endorse any plan of airport expansion which would increase the existing levels of noise and air pollution, or would breach the climate change targets that we've all signed up to. Now, look.
So you're against the Davis report recommendation?
Well, I'm deeply sceptical that of the case of expanding aviation in a way which if unless someone can show me that can be done in a way which meets those environmental tests. Because the reason myself and my party have opposed this, and this is important for Karen and people like her to understand this, is not just it's not for some no reason at all. It's for the environmental reasons. We have to somehow square the circle of making sure that we have aviation capacity to keep ourselves a competitive, open economy, but not to throw the baby out of the bathwater and turn our backs on our environmental obligations or make noise and air pollution worse than it already is for many, many hundreds of thousands of Londoners.
So coming back to Karen's point, the jobs obviously that are driven by Heathrow expansion, what do you say to that, or the possibility of losing those jobs?
Well, look,
they'll go to Frankfurt, they'll go to Amsterdam, they'll go to wherever they'll go.
As it happens, the Davies Commission have tabled, as you know, two options in Heathrow, one in Gatwick, and they're doing this separate work on the so-called Boris Island. So, it's not necessarily whether it goes to Frankfurt. If you advocate Gatwick, then
so you quite like the idea of the island airport, then? Is that your?
No.
You're worried about noise. I get that. I totally get that. You're worried about the environment. So you do want an airport, but you don't know where you want it.
What I do not want to see aviation expansion take place in the southeast of England in a way that would make air or noise pollution worse than it currently is, or would breach our climate change targets. Because, without going into lots of sort of techie detail, we've got these pretty clear...
Well, where are we going to land the planes, Mr. Clegg?
Well, look, but here's the interesting thing. If you look at the Davies report, the interim report, and look, at the end of the day, I'm a sort of person who generally tries to be led by the evidence, and I'll wait to obviously read the final Davies report. And any reasonable person, however strong their feelings are, and mine are on this issue, will of course wait to read the final report. You've got to be led by the evidence. But you see, in his interim report, he actually makes some quite subtle arguments about whether, if you are basically in favour of airport expansion, you then have to decide what why you're doing it. Now, some people say you need to do it to create a hub, and that's what the people around Heathrow say, it's the hub, it's the hub, it's the hub. He actually says in the report, there's quite a strong case to say that the real growth in aviation in the future is going to be for these so-called point-to-point flights. So, in other words, not hub flights, not ones where you need connections to ongoing flights elsewhere. And that's the case for Gatwick. Now, look, I'm not an aviation expert, which is exactly why politicians, I think, rightly have said, let these aviation experts get on with it. But as for where I am very rigid is on the environmental tests in all of this. That's the reason I've always been
So if Boris Island passed those tests, you'd be happy with it?
Well, look, I've seen no one explain to me how Boris Island could remotely pass those tests. But I mean,
you don't seem to like the idea of Heathrow or Gatwick.
I don't like the idea of turning our back on our environmental commitments, or making, particularly our climate change commitments, or making existing noise and air pollution levels worse. Now, there are a whole lot of other factors that people will need to bring to bear. Other people will be more concerned about, I don't know, the local effects of building this island.
Right.
I mean, Boris comes up with one.
Well, as we're on the subject of Boris.
Yes.
According to the London Mayor, you're a great yellow albatross. You hold back sensible policies. I don't want to cast aspersions on my fellow, what is he? He's a radio disc jockey now, isn't he? Because, of course, asked Boris on LBC. I'm sure, continues the Mayor, he has many, many important ceremonial duties. He's a sort of lapdog of David Cameron, who's been converted by taxidermy into a kind of protective shield, like the Emperor Valerian, who was skinned and hung on the wall. That's what he reminds me of, says the Mayor.
Good old Boris. I think he needs to focus on sort of challenging one party leader at a time, rather more than one. But look, I'm slightly lost. Am I a albatross?
Yeah, a great yellow albatross.
A yellow or
DJ.
A DJ.
Ceremonial duties.
Am I a Rottweiler stopping things, or a lapdog allowing for things? It's all very confusing.
Last word to Boris on that?
No, look. I think Boris is a little bit upset that I disagree, as I do, very strongly with. I think his rather patronising remarks about people who've got low IQ, and I guess he was trying to look. At the end of the day, he's a Tory politician who doesn't like Liberal Democrats in government. Hey, it's not hardly a big deal.
Let's move on.
Paul in Islington.
Hello, sir.
Hello, Paul. Hello.
Hello. I just wanted to ask what your opinion is on your coalition partners' claim to a mission accomplished.
This was in Afghanistan. This is the Prime Minister saying earlier this week, as he flew into Camp Bastion, yes, mission accomplished in Afghanistan. Deputy Prime Minister.
Look, to be fair, he didn't actually, and he clarified this in the House of Commons yesterday. He didn't just simply say mission has been accomplished. What he said was that when British troops leave, they can leave with their head held high, that they've done an extremely professional job to the very highest standards in very difficult circumstances.
And that it's mission accomplished.
Well, no. What I think, I mean,
let's look at this then, Mr. Clegg. So it's not mission accomplished, and we're coming out.
I don't think anyone is going to pretend, and I know the Prime Minister does not think that somehow we're leaving Afghanistan like a sort of perfectly formed Switzerland where everything is rosy. It isn't. It's a country with very, very serious difficulties. But in terms of the military tasks which have been asked of our servicemen and servicewomen, the point he was making, and I strongly agree with him, that is that they have done an extraordinarily good job in very, very difficult circumstances.
Right.
They should be very proud of what they have done. Of course, the country is still facing a lot of problems, but when they leave, as they are now, and the drawdown, as you know, will be complete by the general election. It's really important, I think, that we get behind not only them but also their families, who've had to, many of them have had to suffer the greatest sacrifice of all.
So a soldier comes back to his family, and his son or daughter says, "Daddy, did you get the job done? Was it mission accomplished?" How does he reply?
When all our troops are back, of course they've done the job they've been.
So it is mission accomplished.
Of course, it's the military mission is, but I think where the Prime Minister rightly said yesterday in the House of Commons, he was trying to sort of slightly clarify the fact, is that he wasn't somehow claiming that Afghanistan is problem free, which was the implication of the way some people have interpreted his words. It's not what he thinks, it's not what he says, and I think he was quite right in praising the professionalism of the British military without being complacent about the challenges facing Afghanistan now and in the future.
Paul, quick comeback for you on that.
Well, to be honest, I think it's a cheek that he should say that, because there's been so many victims of this war that really shouldn't have gone ahead.
But also your thoughts on the fact that there could be a football match, and will you be playing in goal if it goes ahead?
Well, this was the extraordinary part that we looked at. I don't know how much you're aware of this, Mr. Clegg, but it was also suggested, and indeed Michael Owen accompanied the Prime Minister, the football player Michael Owen accompanied the idea that we'll have an England versus Afghanistan football match at Wembley Stadium.
I haven't followed that, but listen, Afghanistan's got if they've got a football team and they want to play, why should we not be?
So the conflict that led to 446 British military personnel losing their lives, 2,116 injuries, some of them at the gravest level of injury, and we finish it off with a kickabout at Wembley.
You don't finish that off, but look, what we mustn't somehow say to the Afghan people, now we're off, we're not going to treat you as a
have a game of football.
No, Nick, listen. Have you ever been to Afghanistan?
I have not.
No, right. They are very, very proud people. They're incredibly rightly proud of their culture, of their history, of their tradition. They're very. Hang on. They're very.
What's that got to do with football?
No, I'll tell you what. They're also because being a nation.
Yes.
Also involves being proud of your sports prowess. And if they've got a football team and they're proud of their footballers, why on earth what do you want to do? Do you want to say, well, no, because you've got problems, we will refuse to play football against you?
It seems such a strange time to float the idea of a football.
No, I don't know about the timing, and to be honest, I'm not close enough.
He took Michael Owen with him.
Well, look, oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
I mean, it's just weird, isn't it?
Actually, funny enough, I really disagree with this idea that because Afghanistan have got problems.
You're shaking the hands of the troops, whether you do or you don't say mission accomplished. Well done, lads. You're a brave bunch of men and women. And by the way, what about a game of football? Here's Michael Owen. Has he gone nuts?
No, Nick, I really think you're grabbing the wrong end of the stick.
Well, not for the first time.
I really think well, you said it, not me. I think the people of Afghanistan would be really proud of the fact of their own team, of their national team. I have no idea whether their national teams are any good, by the way. Ask me about Arsenal, don't ask me about the Afghan football team. But I'm assuming if they've got a football team, why would we not allow the Afghan football team to play alongside any other nation?
All right.
Well, hang on.
It's
make
odd
your mind
timing.
up. You either agree that you think we should be able to play football,
in a year's
or you
time.
don't.
In a year's
it's the timing you've got a problem.
In a year's
I don't know what the timing is. I don't know what the timing. What is the timing?
No, I'm saying you talk about it in a year's time. I don't know when we're going to play the game. England will probably lose anyway. That'll ultimately
come.
Of course we'll lose. Right, we're celebrating 12 months. We're celebrating 12 months of Call Clegg. Deputy Prime Minister, I've been asking listeners for some of their favourite moments. Very briefly, many voted for this.
Have you ever worn a onesie?
I was actually given a big green onesie.
And some went for this.
Hang on, as someone who likes films, I think there's a distinction between one of the greatest made in recent years and the greatest ever. But
it was, of course...
It's Kung Fu Panda.
Yes, that was the Deputy Prime Minister's favourite movie.
Well... Okay, one of. Steady on, one of, but,
We move on to other
Right,
questions.
David in Mill Hill.
Yeah, good morning.
Hello.
I'd like to clarify something, Mr. Clegg. My understanding is that if any ex-Euro MP criticises the EU, then they lose their pension, and I understand that is the case. So how can we trust anything you say about the EU because it's blighted by this fact that you'll lose your pension, and also someone like Mendelssohn will be losing their pensions if you criticise the EU?
With the greatest respect, David, I have heard a lot of fairly loopy conspiracy theories, but that one, honestly, has to take the Oscar of all conspiracy theories. You're saying that I cannot criticise the European Union because my pension...
No, you're entitled to criticise the EU, but how can we trust what you're saying on the fact that you could be losing your pension if you do criticise it?
Sorry, I cannot stop laughing.
At the EU.
You've cheered him up, I'll tell you that much.
Sorry, I should take this seriously. I cannot... You seriously think that I might lose my pension because of what I say about the European Union?
Yes.
Of course not. It's completely... No. I mean,
okay.
Actually, as it happens, when I was an MEP, I received exactly the same salary and pension as if I was an MP. So at that time, MEPs were paid just as if they were MPs, so the pension wasn't even paid by anyone in the European Union. But I'm sorry, David, I should take it more seriously. No, I can guarantee you with the greatest assurance I can give you with every fibre of my being that my pension is not affected at all by what I say about the European Union.
David, thank you. Let's get an email question. This is from Daniel in Kent. You've called for major changes to the House of Lords after the Lord Hanningfield expose in the Daily Mirror. What needs to be done?
Well, look, what I'd ideally, of course, like to
sorry,
get
this
done...
just remind us. I better just say, sorry, Deputy Prime Minister. This is the Lord who he's done nothing illegal, but it is the morality. He was exposed by the Daily Mirror. It would appear that he clocked up just around £5,700 during the month of July for effectively walking in one door and walking out the other 40 minutes later.
And then had the brass neck to say, "Oh, well, everyone's up to it." Which actually, by the way, I know for a fact not to. There are lots of people in the House of Lords who work incredibly hard and are deeply offended by the fact that he's somehow trying to tar them with the same brush. Look, my view.
Have you seen the Mirror today? There's overwhelming public support for your idea that effectively they should boot out, get shut of crooked peers, place the House of Lords, and really the reform you've talked about for a long time.
Look, there's two big things. There's first a sort of set of just basic things we should have done a long time ago, what I'd call sort of housekeeping things, which we're going to do. So the government is now supporting a bit of legislation which is going through Parliament. It's put forward by a Conservative MP called Dan Biles, which basically means if you don't turn up, well, then you can be sanctioned. And if you're a crook, you can't sit there. You would have thought this should have happened ages ago. It's just basic sort of rules of the game. So let's get on with doing that straight away. But it's the longer term. I mean, look, I know I haven't persuaded the Conservative and Labour parties of this, and they skewered the latest attempts to try and do this. But we've been at this for decades now, one government after the other, one reformer after the next. I'm the only latest in the line of political reformers who gets thwarted by the political establishment of just getting the public to have a say about who sits in the House of Lords. And I cannot, if I sound a bit exasperated by this, we spent like 2 years making the most reasonable case in the world, which is that lawmakers should be put there by people who have to obey the law. And for reasons that you've got to talk to Ed Miliband and David Cameron about, Ed Cameron and David Miliband. David, I'll get them right. David Cameron and Ed Miliband is that their parties just every time push comes to shove, they say yeah. They stick it in their manifesto. They say, oh, absolutely, we believe in democracy and so on and so forth. When they actually got the chance to do it, they start playing games and they block it. And it's happened over and over again. And one day we've got to get over this.
But it's fair to say it was a good piece of journalism by the Mirror.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. I mean,
good old-style journalism, sort of stories we need.
Yeah, no, sure. No, listen, the Mirror and frankly, all newspapers, they keep me and indeed everybody else in power on their toes, and that's as it should be.
Let's move to other calls.
Jonathan in Wendover. Hello, Jonathan.
Good morning, Nick and old Nick.
Hello.
Did you call him old Nick?
Yeah, I am old.
Well, I'm not sure who's the old one, actually.
Me, I'm afraid, yes.
Okay. Anyway, the call is about grammar schools.
Right.
And I'm speaking as somebody who's had children in both and experienced attitude difference. And that seems to be one type of school pushes people up and the other seems to drag everybody down to the same level. And what I want to ask you is whether you're prepared to subject your children to the worst performing comprehensive schools in your constituency.
Well, as it happens, John, I'm very, very, very proud as a constituency MP of Sheffield Hallam of the schools in my constituency. There's some seriously good schools in Sheffield Hallam, in southwest Sheffield, and so I would never denigrate the schools. And frankly, I wouldn't denigrate lots and lots of outstanding state schools. Whether they are now called academies or whether they are just, as you sort of maintain schools in the traditional way, who do a brilliant job. Of course, there are good schools and there are bad schools. The job for government, it seems to me, is to make sure that where there are bad schools and where there are teachers and head teachers who, because they're not running their school as they should, are failing the children, is that we're pretty tough on them and don't allow that to go on and on and on. And that's why we have given greater kind of teeth to the inspection and accountability system so that parents can see which schools are doing well or not doing well. And also, something I announced recently, we're saying to really good head teachers who've got a proven track record of turning schools around, we're actually going to give them new incentives to sort of act like a sort of Champions League of head teachers where they can be moved to other parts of the country to help turn other schools around as well. So I don't think you should just kind of dismiss a whole group of schools. What I do think we've got to be very tough about is that those schools that aren't doing well, there should be a lot of intervention to make sure they're turned around as quickly as possible.
Quick response from you, Jonathan.
Well, I'd like it if you'd actually answer the question I asked, which was about grammar schools. And
no, you didn't. You didn't. You actually, the question you asked was, what should I do with my own kids with failing state schools?
No, I asked, are you? What is your problem with grammar schools? I mean, are you prepared to? Because what I've heard is that you're against grammar schools. And the city school, for instance, is a school in Sheffield that's in special measures, or it's been in special measures. Yeah. And I'd like to know, what I understand is you're against grammar schools. So I may have not made that absolutely clear. I thought I had it in the first part.
So that's the last part.
Sorry, what I'm against, and in fact, I think everybody is.
Are you against grammar schools?
No, what I think everybody is...
Are you for grammar schools, then?
Let me explain.
Right.
Schools that are funded by taxpayers in this country are not able to, and by the way, this is not a Lib Dem thing. This is something that the Conservatives are having a debate, but basically, it is a principle which is being upheld by all parties. Should not be able to select children on the basis of ability, and the reason for that is that if you allow some schools to sort of cream skin some children, and if you like consign other children to a sort of second tier of schools, you don't help children. You don't help the brightest children, actually, and there's very little evidence that you improve the overall standards in the school system. So it's quite a long-held principle now across the party spectrum that when taxpayers are supporting schools, those schools should not be able to handpick children based on academic ability.
Jonathan, thank you. On the subject of education, I have to ask you, Deputy Prime Minister, whether you have any memories of Peter Wright. He's the former headmaster of Caldecott School in Buckinghamshire. You'll be aware he's been found guilty of multiple sexual offences at the school. He's been jailed. From my calculation, you were possibly there when he was teaching. Do you have any memories of him?
No, I do. He was the headmaster of the school I was at, and my younger brother. We were both there. I think all of these revelations about what he and other teachers got up to, it's disturbing.
How do you remember him?
As a head teacher, I left when I was a child. I left 33 years ago when I was, 12, 13. Slightly remote figure. But the thing that is so shocking for me now, sort of over 3 decades later, is to read in the papers that there was this abuse going on. Horrific abuse. And to all intents and purposes, the school seemed entirely normal to the rest of us. That's what I find so. That's what I find personally, obviously, because I was at that school. I remember that head teacher. I left in 1979, 1980. It's very unsettling to know that kind of abuse can go on, and yet a kind of appearance of normality can be maintained.
Let's move on. A question from me. I think I've only got one question this week. Is it all right for two white people to use the word gollywog?
What are you referring to?
There's a case that was before 3 judges yesterday at the London School of Economics in 2009. 2 white people who both worked in the kitchens were discussing food packaging, during which the subject of the golly dolls removal from the Robertson's jam jar came up. Although it was found that the chef who started the conversation said the word quietly to another white person with his back to his black colleague, it is now, in the views of the judges, an isolated act of harassment. That means if you and I want to discuss this, we probably need to make sure there was a black person present. Is that correct?
I genuinely don't know about the case, so without sounding sort of evasive, I really don't want to start commenting on a case that I don't know. It's of course you need to be sensitive about the words that you use, but intention and motivation and context is incredibly important. You described the context there in one way. I'm assuming the judge saw it in another way. Yes. Otherwise they wouldn't come up with the ruling. So I just think everybody.
Do you find it an offensive word?
Look, I really think going from one word to the next, I think it's a word I wouldn't use. Certainly not
ever.
Well, not in this day and age. No, I think the understanding.
You're having a discussion about Robertson's jam, and you wouldn't even say how they used to market it.
Look, there you go. So if you then start talking about words about how they were once used, no, I'm not getting angry at it. I'm just saying that's a very subtle change. Then to say, well, if you're.
But that's what they were discussing, food packaging.
I have no idea what they were discussing. I'd never heard about the case before. All I'm saying is the context in which you use a word, the motivation you have, of course, determines a lot about how you then judge whether someone should or shouldn't have used words. If you then say, wow, hang on, can we not use a word that was once used in a completely different context to describe a particular product? Well, of course, that's totally different. But if you're using a word in a way which is intended to deliver offence, then of course that's different.
Right. Okay, we've got more time for a couple.
Jim in Tunbridge Wells.
Just one question, Mr. Clegg. I spoke to you a couple of months ago regarding the increase that was recommended for the MP's pay. Now that it's been agreed that you're going to get your increase and you said you weren't going to take the money, what are you going to do with it, sir?
About
Are you taking them? What happens to the money that you have decided you're not going to take? Does it go back to the pot that you've given? So you don't get it and pass it on to charity or something like that?
No, hang on, wait, Jim. Both of you, it hasn't happened yet. So I mean, I really hope it doesn't happen, because this suggestion from this independent body, IPSA, that MP should receive that pay increase, and as you know, I don't agree with it. David Cameron doesn't agree with it. Ed Miliband doesn't agree with it. Is not something which has happened yet. It won't happen if it does happen at all, and I hope they rethink this in a big way until there's another review, and then there's a further discussion after the general election. So there's a long way to go on this, and I think at this stage, given no decision's been taken, given no money's been paid out, people like me should be really, really clear that during the period of time in which thousands upon thousands of teachers and social workers and other people who are paid, in the public sector, either have their pay frozen or have a very limited increase of 1%. It is just wholly inappropriate for MPs, whatever's happening to the rest of their expenses, to receive this kind of pay increase. So I will continue to argue that. And as I say, that thankfully we haven't received the money yet, because that final decision hasn't been taken yet.
Final one from me. David Cameron set up a task force to look again at the government's strategy for dealing with extremism and radicalisation in the wake of the killing of a soldier in Woolwich, without going into the trial, obviously, because we were waiting the verdict. How's that task force doing?
Well, it's completed its work, and Theresa May explained the kind of conclusions that it's come up with. Was it the week before last?
Was it? I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, so yes. All done.
All done, and there's lots of very sensible measures there, which try and make sure that we identify where extremism is posing a problem at an earlier stage, and we work with local communities, with faith groups and others to nip it in the bud.
We're celebrating the first year, hopefully the first year, of
I have a card for you. I have a Christmas card for you.
Oh, I shall take that in just a second after I remind you of this.
Nick, since you're here.
Yes.
Since you're here.
Yes.
Well...
You're not going to break my heart, are you?
No.
Thank God for that.
I'd happily raise a pint with you in some holiday resort.
Oh, we go down to Dorset.
But I'd rather be... I have to stress, though, lest Miriam rings up, I'd always much rather go on holiday with my wife.
This was my concern, that you and the Prime Minister were both away on holiday at the same time, with Christmas round the corner. Have you managed to get your diaries together this time, or are we without you or David Cameron at some point?
No. One of us or both of us are here at all times.
At all times?
At all times.
So we don't have that holiday
At
clash.
all times. I'm sure we can return to the theme at another...
Final call for the year is... Have I given you the note? Yes, indeed.
Dan in Bromley. Hello, Dan.
Morning, Mr. Clegg. Morning, Mr. Ferrari.
Hello.
Mr. Clegg, with the recent news that some boys are going to be taught how to treat women with respect and, chat girls up, if for want of a better word.
Yeah.
With the revelations that you gave some time ago that you slept with 30 women before you married the good Lady Clegg,
yes.
I was just wondering what your most successful chat-up line was.
Oh, God. You really need to save this one up for last.
This is the school in Essex that's going to do chat-up
I suppose it's useless for me to point out once again that, anyway, the way that that rather bad interview went with gave a totally false impression.
Well, just your good lady, what was the line that won her heart?
With Miriam? Here's the thing. I've got to... Actually, here's a little confession I've got to make. When I first met Miriam, thunderstruck as I was by her beauty and presence and her character, as I still am today, of course, Miriam's English was very poor, and my Spanish was non-existent. So both of our French was rather imperfect. So our early courtship was done in sort of halting French. That sounds fantastically pretentious, and I'm going to be mocked royally for this. All right, well, I've taken it upon myself, but that is the truth. And then we evolved, of course, and it's the luckiest thing that ever happened to me. Meet Miriam. So there you go.
Quite right. Now I understand.
I have a card for you.
I feel
of Miriam and myself.
Oh, is this the card?
It is the card.
I'm
it is
so
the
grateful.
Card. Yeah.
Oh man,
delivered to you. Hand delivered to you.
This is going on
the
mantelpiece.
Where's my card?
Okay, so this is going on the mantle. That's really, really charming. Listen, thank you for a fantastic year of Call Clegg. Best wishes to your family. Thanks for being a good sport.
And likewise.
Nick Clegg appearing here on LBC 97.3, where news is next.
Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg's telling LBC 97.3 he'd be against a new runway being built at Heathrow.
Why I've always opposed certainly the plans that I've seen